Leon S. Kennedy blinked against the harsh fluorescent glare flickering above him. The metallic taste of cold rust filled his throat as he pushed himself off the wet concrete floor. His head throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache. Looking around, he recognized the sterile, industrial architecture of an underground biological facility, yet nothing about this sector matched any map of Raccoon City or any umbrella black site he had ever encountered. "Leon?" a voice echoed from across the dim chamber. Leon spun around, his hand instinctively dropping to his holster. His sidearm was gone. Claire Redfield stood near a heavy reinforced blast door, wiping dirt from her leather jacket. She looked disoriented, but her eyes were sharp, scanning the dark corners of the room. "Claire," Leon said, stepping forward. "Are you all right? Do you know where we are?" "No," Claire replied, examining a thick steel keypad mounted beside the sealed exit. "The last thing I remember was investigating an abandoned logistics hub on the city outskirts. Then everything went dark. My radio is completely dead." The room was shaped like a sprawling subterranean vault. Cables draped like dead vines from exposed ceiling panels, dripping cold condensate onto rusted machinery. Suddenly, a low chime chimed through an overhead speaker system, followed by static. A distorted, synthesized voice hummed across the intercom. "Subjects identified. Initiative lockout initiated. Total facility purge in 60 minutes. Seek the red keycard to unlock Sector Beta." The speaker went silent with a sharp pop. Above the blast door, a digital timer ignited in crimson light, 59 to 59. "A purge," Claire muttered, her jaw tightening. "They've trapped us in an automated cleanup protocol." Leon walked toward a heavy iron desk positioned in the center of the room. Atop it sat a brass cipher wheel and a blood-stained journal. He flipped open the journal. The pages were covered in frantic scribbles, mathematical equations, and repeating sequences of numbers. "Look at this," Leon said, gesturing Claire over. "This isn't a random trap. Someone designed this environment specifically to force us down a set path. Look at the entry here." Claire leaned down, reading the final handwritten line aloud. "The key lies where light refuses to bend." She looked around the room, noticing a single shadow cast in an unnatural direction by a broken halogen bulb. Under the floor grate near the generator, she realized instantly. Together, they hauled the iron grate aside. Nestled within the dark piping below lay a heavy iron key stamped with a bizarre crest, a serpent coiled around an iron gear. They had taken their first step, but the ticking clock reminded them that time was already running out. The heavy blast door groaned as Leon turned the key within the central mechanism, disengaging the hydraulic deadbolts. The heavy barrier slid open with a hiss, revealing a long, narrow corridor bathed in atmospheric amber emergency lighting. The air was colder here, carrying the faint smell of ozone and damp earth. Claire led the way, keeping her back to the wall as they navigated the labyrinthine hallway. "If this isn't an umbrella facility, who built it?" she whispered, her footsteps barely making a sound on the metal mesh flooring. "The technology looks modern, but the architecture feels decades old." "Whoever it is, they want us running," Leon answered, his eyes darting between the shadowed doorways lining the passage. "And they want us paranoid." As they reached a T-junction, a sharp metallic clatter rang out from the darkness to their left. Leon immediately took a defensive stance, while Claire grabbed an iron pipe resting against a breaker box. From the gloom emerged a figure, weapon drawn, moving with lethal precision. "Freeze!" a sharp, authoritative voice commanded. Leon froze, then sighed in relief as the light caught the distinct blue tactical uniform. "Jill?" Jill Valentine lowered her custom hand cannon, her expression shifting from intense vigilance to quiet disbelief. "Leon? Claire? What are you doing down here?" "We could ask you the same thing," Claire said, stepping forward. "We woke up in Sector Alpha. There's a containment countdown active." Jill nodded grimly. "I've been tracking a black market bioweapon transaction for 3 days. It led me to a freighter down at the docks, but the moment I stepped into the lower hold, the floor dropped out. I woke up in a holding cell 2 levels up. The main access shafts are sealed shut by security bulkheads." The voice on the intercom mentioned a red keycard for Sector Beta, Leon explained. "Do you know where the control hub is?" Jill pointed down the right passage. "There's a central monitoring station past the ventilation shafts. But the door requires a dual authorization code." Two people have to turn separate keys at the exact same second, or the system triggers an automated neurotoxin vent. A fail-safe to prevent anyone from escaping alone, Claire noted. Exactly, Jill replied, adjusting her tactical vest. Whoever set this up knows how military protocols work. They want us to turn on each other when the pressure builds. A sudden heavy vibration rattled the floor plates beneath their feet. Deep within the facility walls, something massive shifted, accompanied by the terrifying sound of rending metal and a low, guttural roar that shook dust from the ceiling beams. We need to move, Leon said grimly. We aren't the only ones trapped down here. The trio moved quickly through the winding substructure, following Jill toward the central monitoring hub. The air grew thicker, heavy with humidity and an unmistakable chemical stench. The walls here were reinforced with heavy titanium plating, scarred by deep, jagged gouges that looked as if they had been carved by massive steel claws. Whatever made those marks, Claire said softly, touching a deep groove in the wall, it wasn't human. Keep your eyes open, Jill warned, checking the chamber of her sidearm. The lower research laboratories were breach-tested before the lockout initiated. If any containment units failed, specimens could be roaming these corridors freely. They reached a massive circular chamber with a domed glass ceiling. Above them, dark water churned against thick acrylic glass. They were directly beneath a lake or coastal bay. In the center of the chamber stood the primary security terminal, its monitors glowing with pale blue diagnostic data. Leon approached the console. The dual-key system is active. We need 2 security tokens to bypass the lockout. Look at the screens, Claire called out, pointing to a series of closed-circuit camera feeds. One monitor displayed a darkened corridor lined with empty containment pods. Another showed a massive, muscular figure in a heavily armored tactical coat pacing slowly through a flooded storage bay. Chris, Jill breathed, recognizing the figure instantly. He's trapped in the lower flooded sector. On the monitor, Chris Redfield was attempting to force open an emergency hatch, but the mechanical override was jammed from the control side. Beyond the glass of his bay, shadows moved swiftly through the deep water. He doesn't have much time, Leon said, studying the console interface. The keycard for Sector Beta is locked in a wall safe right here, but the unlock sequence requires solving an encrypted frequency puzzle. I'll handle the frequency alignment, Claire offered, stepping up to the console and adjusting the analog dials to match the overlapping sine waves on the screen. Jill, get ready on the override switch. Claire's hands moved with practiced speed, tuning the signal until the harsh static resolved into a clean, steady chime. Clack! The safe door popped open, revealing the bright red security keycard. Simultaneously, an alarm began to blare in dark red flashes. Warning: Sector Gamma flood doors retracting. The system is forcing a chain reaction. Jill shouted above the siren. If we don't open Chris's hatch now, that entire sub-level will be submerged. Leon grabbed the red keycard. Claire, stay on the console and manually override Chris's door. Jill, come with me to secure the elevator shaft. Leon and Jill sprinted down a stairwell slippery with condensation, their boots clattering against the iron grates. Down below, the roar of rushing water was deafening. Torrential streams were bursting through structural cracks in the concrete walls as the facility's structural integrity began to give way under the immense pressure of the lake above. Chris! Jill yelled as they hit the flooded floor of Sector Gamma. Cold water immediately rose past their knees. At the far end of the submerged corridor, Chris Redfield was using an iron bar to hold back a jammed hydraulic door while water poured past his shoulders. Upon hearing Jill's voice, he looked up, his face set in determination. Jill, Leon, Chris called out over the sound of the deluge. The main drain valve is jammed. The whole sector is going to capsize if we don't clear the turbine. Leon splashed through the rising water, grabbing the other side of the heavy manual override lever. On 3, 1, 2, 3. With a combined effort of raw physical strength, Leon and Chris hauled the lever downward. The heavy steel door groaned, resisting for a split second before slamming shut against the torrent, sealing off the primary breach and halting the rising water level. Chris wiped water and grime from his forehead, breathing heavily. Good to see you both. How did you get in here? We didn't, Leon said, handing Chris a spare tactical flashlight he had salvaged. We were brought here, just like you. It's a setup, Jill added quickly. Someone brought us all to this facility, initiated an automated purge sequence, and set a 1-hour timer. We've got less than 20 minutes left. Chris took a breath, his eyes narrowing. It's worse than that. Before the power went out in this sector, I found an encrypted log on one of the server terminals. This facility isn't an umbrella lab or a government black site. It's a testing ground designed by an AI, an automated system built to analyze high-valued tactical personnel under extreme stress. A survival trial, Leon muttered. It's gathering combat data. And the only way out, Chris continued, is through the primary extraction shaft at the top of the complex. But the system is designed to lock the final hatch unless all remaining survivors enter the chamber together. Which means no one gets left behind, Jill said firmly. From the intercom above, the automated voice cut through the alarm sirens once more. Warning, final sector evacuation sequence initiated. Time remaining, 15 minutes. Failure to reach the extraction shaft will result in total facility sterilization. Reunited with Claire back at the central hub, the team of 4 stood before the massive reinforced elevator doors that led to the surface shaft. The air was now thick with smoke as minor explosions rocked the lower levels, signaling the start of the facility's automated destruction. The red keycard opens the main elevator, Claire explained, inserting the card into the primary terminal. But the power array is completely offline. The backup generators in the side maintenance bay need to be manually bridged. I'll handle the generators, Chris said, stepping toward the maintenance corridor. Leon, take the terminal controls. Jill, watch the perimeter. If this AI wants combat data, it's not going to let us walk out without one final test. As if on cue, the heavy steel bulkheads along the upper gantries began to slide upward. From the darkened storage bays, automated defense turrets and bioengineered stalker drones equipped with razor-sharp appendages descended on tracks, their optic sensors glowing a sinister crimson. Hostiles incoming, Jill shouted, raising her weapon and firing precise bursts that shattered the primary lens of the lead drone, sending it crashing onto the metal catwalk. Leon ducked behind the control console as heavy fire raked across the chamber, sparks flying in every direction. Claire, work the power routing. I'll cover Chris. Claire dropped to her knees beneath the control panel, stripping the insulation from 2 high-voltage cables with her combat knife. Her fingers worked with calm, methodical precision despite the deafening noise of gunfire and tearing metal surrounding her. I need 30 seconds, she called out. Across the bay, Chris reached the generator room, slamming his weight against the manual engagement lever. The massive diesel engines roared to life with a deafening cough of black smoke, sending power surging back through the primary conduits. Power restored, Chris yelled, throwing himself clear as a security drone detonated against the generator housing. The elevator doors hissed open, revealing a spacious cargo platform designed to ascend the vertical cliff shaft. Move, everyone onto the platform, Leon ordered, firing his final rounds into the central processing unit of an advancing defense unit. Jill and Claire scrambled onto the elevator deck, with Chris right behind them. Leon leapt onto the platform just as the heavy mesh security gate slammed down, cutting off the pursuing drones. Claire slammed her hand onto the ascent control. With a violent jerk, the heavy cargo elevator began its rapid rise toward the surface, leaving the burning, crumbling subterranean nightmare behind in the dark. The elevator rocketed upward through the narrow rock shaft, the sounds of structural collapses fading beneath them as they climbed higher. Dust and heat billowed up from the abyss, but ahead, a faint circle of natural gray light began to widen. 5 minutes to spare, Chris said, leaning against the elevator rail and checking his gear. Not bad for an unannounced exercise. Whoever built that place, Jill said, looking down into the dark shaft below, they got what they wanted, our operational patterns, our response times under extreme pressure. We need to find out who owned that server architecture. The encryption signature on the main console had a specific routing origin, Claire revealed, holding up a small data drive she had detached from the terminal before they escaped. I managed to download the root system logs right before the override. Once we get back to a secure network, we can trace where the data was being transmitted. Leon looked at the drive, his expression stern. They thought trapping us together would force us to turn on each other to survive. They miscalculated. With a final heavy mechanical thud, the elevator locked into place at the surface terminal. The heavy blast doors parted, flooding the elevator deck with the crisp, cold air of early dawn. They stepped out onto an abandoned concrete helipad perched high atop a forested cliff overlooking the ocean. Below them, deep within the mountain, a series of muffled explosions detonated in sequence. The ground trembled beneath their boots as the underground facility collapsed in on itself, burying its secrets beneath thousands of tons of rock. In the distance, the rising sun cast long gold and orange rays across the water, cutting through the morning mist. "So," Claire said, looking at the team around her, "where do we head first?" Leon looked out over the horizon, a faint, confident smirk touching his lips. "First, we get weapons and a real radio. Then, we find out who pulled the strings, and we pay them a visit."